Hello there and welcome back to the Sleep Science. You're easing into the night, lights low, body heavy, but something feels just a little off. The ceiling looks the same, the pillow hasn't betrayed you, yet your mind hums like a refrigerator you can't quite locate. Outside the world is quiet, but inside you there's a faint buzz, as if bedtime itself has been rescheduled without telling you. You probably won't survive this, at least not consciously, because the odds are high you'll drift off somewhere along the way, mid-sentence, mid-thought, mid-existential realization about why you checked your phone one last time. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough to type, drop your location and local time down below. And there's something oddly comforting about knowing someone else, somewhere else, is also negotiating with their own eyelids right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle in, and the first thing you notice is that sleep doesn't arrive the way it used to. Not like it did when you were younger, or at least not the way you remember it. Memory being the unreliable narrator it is, especially past midnight. Once upon a time, sleep felt like a switch. Now it's more like a slow software update, complete with glitches, buffering, and the vague fear that something might restart on its own. This isn't just you, that's the strange part. Across the globe, people are sleeping less, later and more restlessly than they did even a few decades ago. A mainstream fact, quietly confirmed by large population studies, is that average sleep duration has been shrinking in industrialized societies since the mid-20th century. Nothing dramatic enough to make headlines every day, just minutes shaved off here, fragments lost there, adding up night after night like spare change falling through a hole in your pocket. Historians still argue whether pre-industrial humans actually slept more overall or simply slept differently, but there's little debate that modern sleep is under pressure. Your body, meanwhile, hasn't gotten the memo. Biologically, it's still running software optimized for firelight, dawn choruses, and the occasional predator, not notification pings and LED alarm clocks that glow like tiny artificial suns. You lie there, aware of the silence, yet never quite free from it. Even when the house is still, there's a low-level awareness that the world is awake somewhere. Emails cross oceans, servers blink. Someone, somewhere, is microwaving leftovers at 3 a.m. This constant global wakefulness seeps into you subtly, convincing your brain that maybe it should stay alert too. Just in case. A quirky tidbit slips in here, soft as a yawn. In the early days of electric lighting, some doctors worried that extended evening brightness would overstimulate the nervous system and lead to modern nervous exhaustion. They didn't have the word circadian rhythm yet, but they sensed something was changing. Imagine them squinting at a light bulb like it personally offended them. You kind of get it now. Your own nights reflect this shift. Bedtime slides later without permission. Mornings arrive anyway. Yeah, you tell yourself you'll catch up on the weekend, a promise as fragile as a snooze button. The pressure to be productive, informed, reachable, it doesn't clock out when the sun goes down. Even rest feels scheduled, optimized, tracked, and quietly judged. And here's where the strange feeling deepens. Sleep used to be passive. Now it's performative. You're supposed to be good at it, efficient, consistent, 8 hours, no excuses. When that doesn't happen, you don't just feel tired. You feel like you've failed at something fundamental, like forgetting how to blink. No one tells you that your brain evolved for flexibility, not perfection, and certainly not for glowing clocks that remind you exactly how long you've been awake. Thanks for that, by the way. Very soothing. Another mainstream fact drifts in. Once slow and steady, chronic sleep restriction, even mild, accumulates. Your reaction time dulls, your mood thins, your immune system sulks. The scary part is how quickly you adapt to feeling bad. After a while, this groggy version of you feels normal, like background noise you stop noticing, until something forces you to lie still in the dark and really feel it. You shift under the covers. Maybe you've tried blaming the mattress, the pillow, Mercury in retrograde. Maybe you've Googled, why can't I sleep even when tired, at an hour when the internet feels judgmental? The answer, inconveniently, is that nothing is wrong in the dramatic sense. What's happening is quieter, systemic, cultural, biological. Sleep is being gently, persistently squeezed. There's even debate among scholars about whether labeling this as a sleep crisis helps or harms. Historians still argue whether past generations romanticize their rest, while neuroscientists argue over how much modern disruption the brain can truly tolerate long-term. Meanwhile, you're just trying to get comfortable without your leg falling asleep before you do. Priorities. A soft joke sneaks in because it has to. If overthinking were an Olympic sport, bedtime would be the qualifying round. Another one follows. Lighter still, you've never solved a single life problem at 2 a.m., yet your brain remains convinced tonight might be the night. And the third, barely audible, is that your phone claims to support sleep mode while lighting up like a casino whenever it feels lonely. As you breathe, slower now, it becomes clear that something strange really is happening to human sleep. Not as a sudden collapse, but as a gradual drift. The nights are still here, the darkness still comes, but the relationship has changed. Sleep has become something you pursue instead of surrender to, something negotiated instead of trusted. And as this realization settles, not sharply but gently, your body begins to respond in its own time. Muscles loosen, thoughts stretch out, losing their sharp edges. Whatever is happening to sleep, it's happening while you're here, listening, breathing, letting the night do what it still knows how to do best. Wait for you. You don't move much, but your hand knows where the phone is. Muscle memory guides it in the dark, a tiny ritual you barely register anymore. The screen blooms to life, washing your face in cool light. And for a moment it feels comforting, familiar, controllable, predictable. This is the modern campfire, and you sit close, even when you know the smoke stings your eyes. Screens after sunset have become so normal that it's strange to remember a time when evenings simply dimmed. One mainstream fact slips in quietly here. Over 90% of adults in industrialized countries report using at least one screen within an hour of bedtime. Phones, tablets, laptops, televisions, sometimes all of them, like a digital nesting doll of distraction. Your brain doesn't care that you're just checking one thing. It reads light as information and information as potential danger, opportunity, or at the very least, something worth staying awake for. Historians still argue whether humans have always sought stimulation before sleep, or whether this level of engagement is entirely new, but there's no doubt the intensity has changed. A candle flickers, a campfire crackles, a smartphone blasts 1,000 tiny suns directly into your retinas, while showing you a video of someone pressure washing a driveway in another hemisphere. Evolution did not see that coming. You scroll. Maybe it's news, maybe it's memes, maybe it's a message thread that refuses to end politely. Each swipe feels small, harmless. Yet your nervous system is subtly bracing, adjusting, staying just alert enough. The irony is thick enough to nap on. You're tired, so you reach for the very thing that tells your brain not to be. There's a quirky tidbit researchers like to mention at conferences, not usually with a sigh. People consistently underestimate how stimulating their devices are. Even content labeled relaxing often increases heart rate and cognitive arousal. That soothing nature video? Your brain is busy identifying patterns, movement, novelty. It's doing its job a little too well. Turns out, watching waves is not the same as listening to actual waves, no matter how good the speakers are. You tell yourself you'll stop in 5 minutes. 5 becomes 10. 10 becomes, well, I'm already awake. The clock ticks forward, and with it, a low-grade guilt seeps in. You know this isn't ideal. You've read the articles. You've nodded along to the advice. And yet here you are, bathed in blue-white glow, bargaining with tomorrow's version of yourself like they're a stranger you'll never meet. And another mainstream fact settles beside you. Light in the evening delays the release of melatonin, the hormone that helps signal nighttime to your body. This isn't dramatic sabotage, it's subtle sabotage. Melatonin doesn't vanish, it just shows up late, like a friend who missed the memo. By the time it arrives, your alarm clock is already warming up backstage, Historians still argue whether artificial light alone deserves the blame, or whether it's the combination of light, content, and psychological engagement that really disrupts sleep. Likely, it's all of it at once, layered like a very unhelpful cake. Your brain doesn't separate photons from feelings. Excitement, outrage, curiosity, they all glow the same in the dark. As you might remember hearing about blue light filters, those warm tone settings that promise salvation with a toggle switch. They help, a little, but they're not magic. A screen dimmed to amber is still a screen, still a portal to novelty. It's like whispering instead of shouting. You're quieter, sure, but you're still talking when you should be listening to the silence. Soft humor drifts through because it's that kind of night. Joke 1. Nothing makes you want to reorganize your entire life like lying in bed with a phone at midnight. Joke 2. You've never accidentally learned something useless faster than during just one more scroll. Joke 3. Barely there. Your phone battery sleeps better than you do, and it doesn't even have a nervous system. There's also a social layer to all this. Screens connect you. One in connection feels good, especially when the day winds down and the quiet creeps in. Messages arrive from friends in different time zones. Group chats pulse with late-night energy. You don't want to miss anything. There's a subtle fear of absence, of being out of sync, of waking up to a conversation that's already moved on without you. Historians still argue whether this constant connectivity fulfills an ancient social need or creates a new kind of isolation. But your body just feels the result, a tension between wanting rest and wanting relevance. Sleep asks you to disconnect completely. The modern world is not great at encouraging that. You set the phone down, maybe face down, maybe screen off, maybe just far enough away to pretend you won't reach for it again. The darkness feels thicker now, almost physical. Shuksho, your eyes adjust slowly, like they're remembering how. There's a faint after image behind your eyelids, a ghost of text and icons, fading at its own pace. A strange thing happens in this moment. Without the screen, your thoughts get louder. The quiet amplifies them. This is often why you reach for the phone in the first place, to smooth over the transition from stimulation to stillness. No one taught you how to do that gently. No one really teaches that at all. Another quirky tidbit floats by. Some sleep researchers compare modern bedtime routines to slamming on the brakes at full speed. All day you're accelerating. Information, tasks, interactions, and then you expect to stop instantly. The brain, understandably, resists. It prefers a long off-ramp, not a sudden cliff. You breathe. The urge to check the phone again flickers, then dims. Whatever is happening to human sleep, it's entangled with these glowing rectangles, these tiny windows that never close on their own. They don't mean harm, they just don't know when to leave. And as your body slowly recalibrates to the absence of light, something ancient stirs. Darkness, real darkness, is still a signal your nervous system understands. It may take a while, it may complain, but it listens eventually. The screen stays dark, the room stays quiet, and somewhere beneath the habit, beneath the glow, your sleep waits patiently, like it always has, for the world to finally stop talking. The darkness feels deeper now, but your body hasn't fully caught up. Even without the screen, there's a faint alertness humming through you, like a room where the lights are off, but the stereo is still quietly playing. Well, this is where biology steps in, uninvited but unavoidable, to explain why your eyes are tired while your brain insists on hosting a late-night meeting. Blue light biology sounds technical, but you experience it personally every evening. Light, especially the shorter blue wavelengths common in LEDs and screens, talks directly to a small cluster of cells in your eyes that don't care about vision at all. Their job is timekeeping. They report to your brain's master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a name that sounds like a spell from a fantasy novel, but behaves more like a very strict librarian. When these cells detect blue heavy light, they send a clear message: it's daytime. Stay alert. No excuses. One mainstream fact slips in here, steady and well-established. Exposure to blue-rich light in the evening suppresses melatonin more strongly than warmer light. Melatonin isn't a sleeping pill. It's a signal, a chemical dusk. When that signal is delayed or weakened, sleep doesn't disappear. It just drifts later, thinner, more fragile. You still sleep, but it's like arriving at a party after most people have already left. Historians still argue whether ancient humans experienced anything comparable during full moons or long summer evenings. But the scale is wildly different now. Moonlight is gentle, reflected, and rare. Your phone, on the other hand, is a handheld noon sun that fits in your pocket and follows you into bed like an overly attached friend. There's a quirky tidbit that often surprises people. Blue light doesn't just affect sleep timing, it affects mood. Some studies suggest evening light exposure can increase alertness and even mild anxiety in certain individuals. Not enough to cause panic, just enough to keep your thoughts lightly caffeinated. It's like your brain had half an espresso without asking you first. You notice it as a kind of mental sharpness that refuses to dull. Ideas feel close, reachable. Memories line up for review. You replay conversations, draft imaginary emails, rehearse arguments you will never actually have. Your body is horizontal, but your mind is upright, pacing slowly, hands clasped behind its back. Historians still argue whether our ancestors experienced this same bedtime rumination or whether it's amplified by modern cognitive load. Either way, your brain treats light as permission. Permission to plan, to worry, to create. Sleep, unfortunately, requires the opposite, permission to stop. Another mainstream fact arrives softly. Circadian rhythms are not just about sleep. They regulate body temperature, hormone release, digestion, even immune function. When light pushes these rhythms later, everything shifts with it. Dinner sits heavier. Mornings feel harsher. Your internal orchestra keeps playing, but the conductor is a little offbeat. Soft humor sneaks in, because it always does. Joke 1. Your brain will ignore hunger, thirst, and basic logic, but will absolutely respect a glowing rectangle. Joke 2. You've never felt more awake than when you're trying very hard to be asleep. Joke 3. The phrase wind down implies a knob you can turn, which is frankly optimistic. You might remember advice about using warmer bulbs at night or dimming lights after sunset. It sounds quaint, almost old-fashioned, like recommending handwritten letters. But there's biology behind it. Warm light mimics firelight, which humans evolved around for tens of thousands of years. It flickers. It dims naturally. It doesn't shout at your brain about breaking news or unread messages. There's also debate here. Historians still argue whether the focus on blue light oversimplifies sleep problems, and some scientists caution that behavior matters as much as wavelength. A bright, exciting conversation under warm light can still keep you awake, while a boring spreadsheet might put you to sleep under fluorescent bulbs. Your brain weighs meaning as heavily as photons. You shift again, feeling your body temperature slowly drop. That's another piece of the puzzle. As night progresses, your core temperature naturally dips, helping signal sleep readiness. Light exposure can delay this cooling, keeping you just warm enough to feel restless. It's subtle, but your nervous system notices. It always does. A quirky fringe tidbit floats through the dark. Some researchers have experimented with glasses that block specific wavelengths of light in the evening. People wearing them often look like they're preparing for a very low-stakes science fiction convention, but results suggest they can help melatonin rise on schedule. Function over fashion, at least in the dark. You don't need special glasses right now. You just notice how your eyes feel, how the room looks without artificial glare. Shadows soften, edges blur. The world loses some of its urgency. This is what your biology has been waiting for. Not silence exactly, but dimness. Permission. On another mainstream fact settles in. Humans are remarkably adaptable, but circadian rhythms move slowly. You can't force them with willpower. You can only nudge them night after night with consistent cues. Darkness is one of the strongest cues there is. Historians still argue whether modern humans are in the middle of a long circadian experiment, pushing bedtimes later across generations, but your body treats tonight as the only data point that matters. It responds to what's happening now, not to what you intend tomorrow. Your breathing evens out. Thoughts still drift through, but they're less sharp, more like clouds than bullet points. The biology lesson fades into sensation. Heavy eyelids, warm blankets, the gentle pull downward that feels less like falling and more like sinking into something familiar. Hey, blue light did its work earlier. Now darkness is doing its own. Whatever strange changes are happening to human sleep, they're written here, in this quiet negotiation between ancient cells and modern habits. And for the moment at least, the ancient side is starting to win. The night moves forward whether you notice or not. Time stretches, then compresses, and somewhere between one breath and the next, you become aware of a quiet frustration. You know you should be asleep by now. Not just sleepy, not just resting, properly asleep, checked out, unreachable. The idea of 8 solid hours looms like a standard you didn't agree to, but are somehow still judged by. The vanishing 8 hours is one of the great modern myths and measurements rolled into one. It's repeated so often it feels ancient, yet it's relatively new. When one mainstream fact worth laying gently on the pillow is that the 8-hour night became popular during the industrial era, when factory schedules demanded standardized blocks of rest. Before that, sleep was more fluid, more negotiated with darkness, season, and social rhythm. Historians still argue whether 8 hours is a biological ideal or simply a convenient average that stuck. You still chase it, though. You calculate backward from your alarm, doing midnight math that never ends well. If you fall asleep now, you'll get 6 hours and 42 minutes. Now it's 6 hours and 39. The numbers tick down, and with each one, sleep feels less like a refuge and more like a performance review. There's a quirky tidbit hidden in sleep research that feels oddly comforting. Humans can function surprisingly well with variable sleep. While as long as deprivation isn't chronic, your body isn't fragile glass. It's more like a flexible reed. The problem is that modern life bends it in the same direction every single day. Later nights, earlier mornings. Repeat. Another mainstream fact slips in, soft but firm. Adults today sleep on average about 1 to 2 hours less than adults did a century ago, depending on the country and measurement method. That doesn't sound catastrophic until you multiply it by years. Lost sleep doesn't vanish. It accumulates quietly, like dust under furniture you never move. Historians still argue whether earlier generations actually slept longer or simply reported sleep differently. But diaries and historical records suggest nights were longer, especially before widespread artificial lighting. Winter nights in particular stretched luxuriously. However, you imagine that now? 12 hours of darkness, no obligation to be productive after sunset. Your inbox shudders at the thought. You shift, aware of your body's weight, the subtle ache of muscles that didn't quite recover from yesterday. Sleep is when repair happens, when hormones coordinate their nighttime chores. Growth hormone rises, tissues mend, memories consolidate. When sleep shrinks, these processes don't stop, they rush. Corners get cut. The work still gets done, just not as carefully. Soft humor drifts in because it helps. Joke 1. Nothing makes you more aware of time than trying to sleep before an alarm. Joke 2. You've never been worse at estimating minutes than at 2 a.m. Joke 3. I'll go to bed earlier tomorrow is the bedtime equivalent of I'll start the diet Monday. There's also a cultural layer to the disappearing 8 hours. Productivity is praised. Busyness is worn like a badge. Sleep, meanwhile, is framed as negotiable. You can borrow from it, steal from it, optimize it. The language alone gives it away. No one says borrow from breathing, but sleep, apparently that's flexible. A fringe tidbit slides in from the edges of anthropology. Some societies historically practice segmented sleep, 2 shorter sleep periods with a quiet, wakeful interval in between. People would pray, talk, tend fires, even visit neighbors. Historians still argue whether this was widespread or exaggerated, but it suggests that the modern demand for one uninterrupted block may not fit every brain equally well. You might recognize that middle-of-the-night wakefulness, the sudden clarity, the calm alertness. Instead of accepting it, you often panic because you've been taught it's wrong. But in another era, this might have been normal, even useful. Tonight, though, it just feels like a delay. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Sleep need varies between individuals. Some people truly do fine on 6 hours. Others unravel quietly below 8. The trouble is, you don't always know which category you're in until you've tested the limits for years. By then, the data is messy. Historians still argue whether modern society systematically favors short sleepers, rewarding them with more visible output, while quietly sidelining those who need more rest. Your body, of course, does not care about societal rewards. It keeps its own score. You feel the tug of war inside you, between letting go and trying harder. Trying harder never works, but it's such a tempting instinct. You press your eyes shut, then relax them again. You tell yourself stories about tomorrow. You bargain, you surrender. None of it is quite the right lever. There's a gentle truth hiding here. Sleep arrives best when it's not measured. The more you watch the clock, the more it watches you back. The 8-hour ideal becomes a spotlight, and sleep is famously shy. Another quirky tidbit floats through. Some sleep labs don't even show participants the time, because awareness of it changes sleep architecture. People sleep differently when they don't know how long they've been asleep or awake. Ignorance, in this case, really is bliss. Your breathing deepens again. The numbers fade. The idea of 8 hours loosens its grip. Tonight doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be enough. Whatever is happening to human sleep, part of it is this quiet pressure to quantify, standardize, and optimize something that evolved to be responsive, not rigid. And as you lie here, letting the night be what it is, you feel a small release, less chasing, more allowing. Sleep, imperfect and unmeasured, edges closer. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a to-do list clears its throat. It doesn't speak loudly, but it's persistent, like a coworker who just has one quick thing long after the office lights are off. Work, it turns out, does not respect bedtime the way your body wishes it would. Work never sleeps, and lately, neither do the people orbiting it. That one mainstream fact lands here with a tired thud. The average workday has quietly expanded beyond traditional hours, especially in jobs tied to digital communication. Emails, messages, shared documents, they follow you home, then into bed, then occasionally into your dreams, where you still somehow forget the attachment. Historians still argue whether humans have ever truly separated work from rest, but there's a key difference now. In agrarian societies, work rose and fell with daylight and seasons. There were intense periods and long lulls. Modern work, by contrast, is steady, abstract, and portable. It lives in your pocket. It vibrates. It waits. You feel this as a low-grade vigilance. Even when no one is actively messaging you, there's the possibility that they could. Your nervous system treats possibility almost the same as reality. It stays slightly braced, like a muscle that never fully unclenches. Bedtime becomes less about recovery and more about temporary disengagement. There's a quirky tidbit that floats around organizational psychology. People fall asleep faster on nights when they feel they've closed the loop on work tasks, even if they did less overall. It's not workload that keeps you up as much as unfinished narrative. Your brain hates loose ends. It wants resolution, not spreadsheets. Another mainstream fact slips in quietly. Shift work and irregular schedules are associated with higher rates of sleep disorders, metabolic issues, and mood disturbances. This isn't about laziness or discipline. It's about biology colliding with scheduling. Your circadian rhythm prefers predictability. Your rotating shifts and late-night emails politely ignore that preference. Historians still argue whether the Industrial Revolution marked the true beginning of sleep disruption or whether the information age deserves that title. Factories impose clocks. Smartphones dissolve them. Either way, the boundary between on and off has thinned to a suggestion. Soft humor sneaks in because it's bedtime and your brain appreciates it. Joke 1, the phrase work-life balance implies two separate containers, which is adorable. Joke 2, nothing says relaxation like remembering an email you forgot to send 3 days ago. Joke 3, your boss has no idea they're occasionally the last thought in your head before sleep, which feels like an HR issue. You notice how thoughts about work feel different from other worries. They're sharper, way more procedural. You rehearse conversations, anticipate outcomes, rewrite messages that no longer matter. This kind of thinking lights up problem-solving networks in the brain, the exact opposite of what sleep requires. It's like revving an engine in neutral. There's debate here too. Historians still argue whether modern work actually demands more cognitive effort or whether it simply demands attention more continuously. The result feels the same at night: mental residue. Sleep used to follow physical fatigue. Now it has to push past mental momentum. A fringe tidbit drifts in from the edges of sleep science. Some cultures enforce a digital sunset, where work communication is legally or socially discouraged after certain hours. Early data suggests people sleep better, not because work disappears, but because uncertainty does. When you know nothing will arrive, your brain stands down. You imagine what that would feel like. True closure, a day with a defined ending. Instead, your own evenings blur. Dinner overlaps with inbox checks. Rest is punctuated by glances at screens. Even leisure feels productive, like it should result in something measurable. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Psychological detachment from work in the evening is one of the strongest predictors of good sleep quality. Not time management, not even total hours worked. Detachment. The ability to say, not now. It's a skill, and like most skills, it's unequally taught and unevenly rewarded. Historians still argue whether future societies will recalibrate around rest or continue stretching the workday thinner and thinner. For now, you live in the in-between. You care about what you do. You also care about sleeping. Some nights, these two values wrestle quietly in the dark. Your body responds before your mind fully does. Shoulders drop, jaw loosens. The day, imperfect and unfinished, begins to feel farther away. You remind yourself, gently, that nothing truly urgent happens at 1 a.m., except sleep. Another quirky tidbit floats through. Writing down unfinished tasks before bed can reduce sleep onset time. It's called a cognitive off-ramp. Your brain sees the list and relaxes, trusting the future you to handle it. Future you is very capable, especially after rest. You don't get up to make a list now, you just let the thought exist. Work will be there tomorrow. It always is. Tonight, it doesn't need you. Whatever strange shift is happening to human sleep, when it's entangled with this always-on work culture, this quiet expectation of availability. But as you lie here, unavailable on purpose, you reclaim a small piece of night. The to-do list fades, the hum quiets, and sleep, patient as ever, edges closer once again. The night is calm now, but earlier today lingers in your system like a polite guest who missed the hint to leave. You feel tired, yet not quite sedated by it, and somewhere in the chemistry of your bloodstream, there's a reason. Caffeine creep doesn't announce itself loudly. It arrives gradually, cup by cup, hour by hour, until bedtime feels oddly alert for no obvious cause. You think back over the day. Maybe it started innocently, a morning coffee, almost ceremonial. Then another because mornings are ambitious. Maybe an afternoon tea, which feels healthier somehow. When even though your nervous system can't read branding, maybe a soda or an energy drink or a piece of chocolate that definitely doesn't count. By evening, you're not buzzing, you're just not sleepy enough. One mainstream fact slides in here, steady and unavoidable. Caffeine has a half-life of about 5 to 7 hours in most adults. That means half of it is still circulating long after you think it's worn off. Drink coffee at 4 p.m. and a meaningful amount is still hanging around at 10 or 11, tapping your neurons like it's asking if the party's really over. Historians still argue whether humans have always relied on stimulants to shape wakefulness or whether caffeine's dominance is uniquely modern. People have chewed coca leaves, brewed tea, and fermented odd things for millennia. But never before has a stimulant been so concentrated, so socially endorsed, and so casually consumed at all hours. Coffee used to be an event. Now it's background hydration. You experience caffeine not as jittery energy, but as resistance to sleep. It works by blocking adenosine, a chemical that builds up in your brain throughout the day and signals sleep pressure. Caffeine doesn't remove adenosine. It just covers its receptors like a temporary blindfold. When the caffeine wears off, adenosine is still there, waiting sometimes in a small, angry crowd. There's a quirky tidbit sleep researchers like to mention. Caffeine doesn't just delay sleep. It can reduce deep sleep even if you fall asleep at the usual time. You might not notice this consciously. You slept. You dreamed. But you wake up feeling oddly unrefreshed, like you charged your phone to 80% and unplugged it early without realizing. Historians still argue whether modern fatigue is driven more by sleep loss or by sleep quality erosion. Caffeine plays a sneaky role in both. It helps you push through tiredness, which feels productive, but it also subtly reshapes the night that's supposed to restore you. The loop is elegant and a little cruel. Soft humor drifts through because this is familiar territory. Joke 1. Caffeine's favorite trick is convincing you it's gone while it's still very much in charge. Joke 2. You've never loved a substance more that also actively sabotages your bedtime. Joke 3. Decaf feels like a lie everyone politely agrees to believe. You might tell yourself you're immune. Lots of people do. I can drink coffee at night and sleep just fine, they say, usually while yawning aggressively the next day. One mainstream fact gently contradicts this confidence. People are notoriously bad at judging how caffeine affects them. Subjective sleepiness and objective sleep quality often don't line up. You feel fine. Your brain waves disagree. There's debate here too. Historians still argue whether caffeine use increased dramatically because people slept less, or whether people slept less because caffeine use increased. It's a classic chicken and egg problem, except the chicken is exhausted and the egg is a latte. You notice how caffeine has crept later into the day over the years. What once felt indulgent now feels necessary. Afternoon meetings demand alertness. Long commutes require focus. The stimulant slowly shifts from optional boost to structural support. Bedtime, meanwhile, unabsorbs the cost. A fringe tidbit floats in from the edges of chronobiology. Genetic differences affect how quickly people metabolize caffeine. Some people clear it fast. Others hold on to it like a souvenir. You don't know which category you're in without testing, so you default to assumption. Most people assume they're fast metabolizers. Statistically, many of them are wrong. You breathe, noticing your heart rate. Calm, but present. Caffeine doesn't always make you feel wired. Sometimes it just keeps the lights on a little too bright in the control room. Thoughts don't race. They simply refuse to stop entirely. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Even small amounts of caffeine consumed late in the day can delay circadian rhythms, pushing sleep later and shortening total rest time. It's not dramatic. It's cumulative. A quiet nudge, night after night, until bedtime drifts without explanation. Historians still argue whether the rise of caffeine culture mirrors the rise of industrial schedules or the rise of cognitive labor. Probably both. Caffeine smooths the edges of fatigue in a world that rarely pauses. It's not malicious. It's useful. It just doesn't clock out when you do. You remember that caffeine is socially invisible. No one blinks at a late coffee the way they might at a late drink. It's framed as responsible, even virtuous, fuel for productivity. The idea that it might be part of your sleep trouble feels almost impolite, like criticizing a coworker who's technically doing their job. On another quirky tidbit drifts by, some studies suggest that simply switching to caffeine-free evenings, even without changing total sleep time, can improve how rested people feel. It's not about deprivation, it's about timing. Your brain likes clarity. Stimulants blur the message. You don't vow to quit caffeine forever. That would be unrealistic and frankly unnecessary. You just notice its presence now, the way you notice background noise once it's pointed out. Awareness alone softens its grip. Sometimes. Historians still argue whether future generations will look back at constant caffeine used the way we look at smoking on airplanes. Normal, ubiquitous, and vaguely horrifying in retrospect. For now, it's just part of the landscape. Your eyelids grow heavier. The caffeine that's left is doing less work now, outnumbered by sleep pressure. Now adenosine taps insistently. The balance shifts. Whatever strange transformation is happening to human sleep, caffeine is woven into it, not as a villain, but as an accomplice. It helps you survive the day and quietly complicates the night. And as you lie here, letting the chemistry settle, you feel the edge of sleep approach again. Not sudden, not dramatic, but steady, patient, waiting for the stimulants to finally politely step aside. The house is still, caffeine finally loosening its grip, work thoughts fading to a low murmur. And yet, sleep hesitates. This is the part of the night where nothing external is really happening. But inside you, a quiet rehearsal begins. Anxiety in the dark doesn't need a trigger. It just needs silence. You lie there staring at the back of your eyelids, wet, and your mind does what it's been trained to do all day. Scan for problems. Small ones surface first. Did you reply to that message? Did you say something odd in that conversation? Then the bigger questions drift in, less defined, heavier around the edges. Your brain, freed from daytime distractions, decides this is the perfect moment to check on everything that has ever worried you. Very considerate timing. One mainstream fact settles in gently. Anxiety and sleep have a bidirectional relationship. Poor sleep increases anxiety, and anxiety disrupts sleep. It's a feedback loop so efficient it's almost elegant. Even low-level, everyday stress, nothing diagnosable, nothing dramatic, can fragment sleep and lengthen the time it takes to drift off. Historians still argue whether anxiety is more prevalent now or simply more visible, but the modern environment supplies endless raw material. News cycles never rest. Social comparison never sleeps. Uncertainty hums constantly in the background, like electrical interference. You only notice when the room gets quiet. You feel anxiety not as panic, but as tension, a clenched jaw, a shallow breath, a sense that something needs to be solved before you can rest. Sleep, however, is not a problem to solve. It's a state to allow. Anxiety doesn't understand that distinction. It's a hammer looking for nails. There's a quirky tidbit from sleep labs that feels oddly relatable. People with anxious tendencies often fall asleep faster when mildly distracted. Soft audio, neutral voices, predictable stories. The brain relaxes when it's given something boring but steady to hold on to. Silence for some minds is too much freedom. Historians still argue whether humans historically slept in quieter environments or whether natural nighttime sounds, wind, insects, distant animals, provided a constant auditory backdrop. Total silence may actually be a modern invention. Your brain, unused to it, fills the gap with its own noise. Soft humor drifts in because it's easier to smile than to wrestle your thoughts. Joke 1. Your brain has never once fixed your life at midnight, but it remains optimistic. Joke 2. Nothing feels more urgent at night than something that absolutely isn't. Joke 3. Anxiety waits all day for bedtime, like it checked the schedule. You notice how anxiety sharpens time awareness. Each minute awake feels louder. You start monitoring your own body, heart rate, breathing, heaviness, checking for signs of sleep like a nervous intern watching a clock. Paradoxically, this vigilance keeps you awake. Sleep requires a small act of forgetting. Another mainstream fact arrives softly. Hyperarousal, heightened mental and physiological alertness, is a core feature of insomnia. It doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means your nervous system is doing its job a little too thoroughly, protecting you from threats that exist mostly in thought. Historians still argue whether modern life has increased baseline arousal levels across populations. Constant alerts, deadlines, and social pressures may keep the nervous system slightly elevated, even at rest. Bedtime then becomes less of a shutdown and more of a slow power down that sometimes stalls. A fringe tidbit floats through the dark. Some cultures teach children simple cognitive rituals for nighttime. Counting breaths, visualizing familiar paths, repeating neutral phrases. Not affirmations, not problem solving, just gentle mental grooves that lead towards sleep. Adults, meanwhile, are expected to figure it out alone. You breathe in slowly, out even slower. Anxiety doesn't vanish, but it softens. It's harder to maintain alarm when the body refuses to cooperate. Your shoulders sink deeper into the mattress. The bed feels more supportive than it did a few minutes ago, as if it's been waiting patiently. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Mindfulness and relaxation techniques can reduce sleep onset latency, particularly for people whose main barrier is racing thoughts. They don't eliminate anxiety. They change your relationship to it. Thoughts can pass through without requiring engagement. Historians still argue whether ancient humans worried at night the way we do now, or whether immediate survival concerns made modern abstract anxiety less common. Either way, worry is a human feature, not a flaw. It just doesn't need the night shift. You stop trying to resolve tomorrow. Tomorrow will arrive regardless of your preparations. The future does not require rehearsal at this hour. This realization doesn't come as a dramatic insight, just a quiet permission to stop. Another quirky tidbit drifts in. People often report that worries feel less important in the morning, even when circumstances haven't changed. Sleep doesn't solve problems directly, it changes perspective. That's its hidden power, and it only works if you let it. The thoughts slow. Gaps appear between them. Not silence exactly, but space. The kind of space sleep can move into without being noticed. Whatever strange transformation is happening to human sleep, anxiety is braided tightly into it. Not because people are weak, but because minds evolve to be alert in uncertain environments. The modern world supplies uncertainty in abundance. And as you lie here no longer arguing with your thoughts, just letting them drift, you feel that familiar tipping point. The moment where being awake takes effort and letting go feels easier. Anxiety loosens its grip. The dark feels less watchful, and sleep, unbothered by your worries, arrives quietly, right on its own terms. Sleep finally takes you, but it doesn't go quietly. Instead of fading to black, the night lights up from the inside. Dreams arrive vivid, strange, oddly loud, like someone turned up the saturation while you weren't looking. You're flying, arguing, remembering places that don't exist anymore, all with the emotional volume slightly too high. When you surface briefly, half awake, you get the sense that something about dreaming has changed. Dreams getting louder isn't just a poetic feeling. One mainstream fact anchors this gently. People today report remembering dreams more often than in the past, particularly emotionally intense dreams. This isn't necessarily because dreams are new or stronger, but because sleep itself is more fragmented. Every brief awakening gives you a chance to notice what was happening in your mind a moment earlier. Uninterrupted sleep erases dreams. Broken sleep puts them on display. Historians still argue whether ancient people paid more attention to dreams or simply interpreted them differently. In many early cultures, dreams were messages, divine, prophetic, or diagnostic. Today, they're more likely to be treated as curiosities or psychological debris. Same phenomenon, different framing. Your brain, meanwhile, keeps producing them regardless of what you believe. You drift back under, and the dream resumes where it left off, as if mildly annoyed you interrupted. This is another mainstream fact slipping by. REM sleep, the stage most associated with vivid dreaming, tends to cluster in the later part of the night. When sleep is shortened or delayed, REM can become compressed and intense, like a movie played at double speed but with the volume cranked up. There's a quirky tidbit researchers love to mention because it sounds fake but isn't. Emotional stress increases REM density, the frequency of rapid eye movements during REM sleep. More movement, more intensity. Your eyes dart under closed lids while your body lies still, temporarily paralyzed, so you don't act out whatever bizarre scenario your brain has queued up. Very considerate design choice, honestly. Historians still argue whether modern emotional load, news, social tension, constant comparison, feeds into this dream intensity. Your waking life supplies raw material. Your sleeping brain remixes it without supervision. Faces blur together. Places overlap. Conversations replay with new endings. Dreams aren't stories so much as emotional simulations. Soft humor floats in because dreams are absurd and you know it. Joke 1. Your brain can invent entire cities in dreams but forgets where you put your keys. Joke 2. Dream logic would not survive even the gentlest fact-checking. Joke 3. Nothing makes you question reality like waking up relieved that an argument with a talking elevator was not in fact real. You wake again, briefly. The room is dark. The dream lingers, sticky and emotional, like a song you can't quite shake. This is where it feels louder than it used to. The feelings don't fade instantly. They follow you into wakefulness, leaving behind a residue, unease, nostalgia, relief, sometimes all at once. Another mainstream fact settles in. REM sleep plays a role in emotional regulation and memory processing. It helps decouple emotional intensity from experiences, filing them away more gently. When REM is disrupted or intensified, this process can feel incomplete. You wake up with the emotion still attached, like a note that didn't quite make it into the folder. Historians still argue whether people in pre-industrial societies experienced fewer awakenings during REM or simply didn't document them. Diaries suggest dreams were common, but the modern ability to wake, check the time, check a phone, and ruminate immediately may amplify their perceived impact. Attention is a powerful volume knob. A fringe tidbit drifts in from the edges of neuroscience. Lucid dreaming, being aware you're dreaming, appears more frequently in people with irregular sleep schedules. The boundary between waking and dreaming thins. Consciousness peeks through. It sounds cool, and sometimes it is, but it can also leave you feeling oddly unrested, like you never fully clocked out. So you sink back down again. The dream changes. Now it's quieter, more symbolic, less plot, more feeling. This is your brain doing housekeeping, sorting through the day's impressions, deciding what to keep and what to dissolve. Faces you barely notice that get screen time. Trivial moments expand. The important stuff hides watching from the corner. Another mainstream fact slides in. Sensory deprivation during sleep increases internal imagery. With no external input, the brain turns inward. When waking life is overstimulating, sleep life compensates with rich inner worlds. Dreams are not random, they're responsive. Historians still argue whether the rise in reported nightmares correlates with global stressors or with increased willingness to talk about them. Either way, your dreaming brain is sensitive to the emotional climate. It doesn't know what's news and what's personal. It processes everything as experience. Soft humor tiptoes through again. Joke 1. Dreams will confidently cast people you haven't seen in 10 years as main characters. Joke 2. Your brain will generate intense emotional stakes for scenarios that make absolutely no sense. Joke 3. Dream. You is wildly underqualified for the situations dream you accepts without question. You stir once more, not fully awake, just hovering. The dream dissolves like fog. This hovering state is more common now than it used to be. Another mainstream fact notes. Micro-awakenings pepper modern sleep, especially in stressed or sleep-deprived individuals. They're brief, often forgotten, but they stitch dreams closer to waking awareness. Historians still argue whether this blending of states contributes to the sense that dreams are louder, closer, harder to shake. Boundaries matter. When they blur, experiences bleed. There's a gentle truth here. Louder dreams don't mean worse sleep by default. They mean different sleep. Your brain is adapting to pressure, finding ways to process emotion and memory even when the night is shorter or more broken. It's doing its job creatively, if not quietly. A quirky tidbit floats by as you drift deeper again. People who keep dream journals often report even more vivid dreams over time. Attention trains recall, the more you notice dreams, the more present they feel. The opposite is also true. Dreams fade when ignored. Your awareness shapes the experience. You let this one go. No journaling, no analysis. Just sensation softening. When images thinning, emotion draining away. The night feels less crowded now. Whatever strange changes are happening to human sleep, dreams are part of the signal. They're responding, adapting, sometimes shouting to be heard. They reflect a mind processing a world that rarely slows down. And as the last fragments dissolve, you sink more fully into the mattress. The dreaming quiets, the volume lowers, sleep deepens. Less theatrical now, more restorative. For the moment, there's nothing to watch, nothing to remember, nothing to interpret. Just rest, doing its quiet work while you drift, unaware, unbothered, and finally, deeply asleep. You wake just enough to notice it, the faint buzz on your wrist, or the quiet glow from a device on the nightstand. Even in the dark, even half asleep, you're being observed. When wearables watching you has become such a normal part of rest that it barely feels strange anymore. You slept, but now you're about to find out how well you slept. And somehow those feel like two different things. One mainstream fact settles in calmly. Consumer sleep trackers have exploded in popularity over the last decade, with millions of people now monitoring sleep duration, stages, heart rate, and movement. What was once confined to sleep labs and adhesive electrodes is now packaged into sleek bands and rings, marketed as insight, control, and peace of mind. Knowledge supposedly is power. Even at 3 a.m., you lie there aware that your night has been turned into data. Minutes asleep, minutes awake, deep sleep percentages, REM graphs. It's tempting to check immediately to see how you did, tonight, like peeking at exam results before you're fully awake. Your body feels okay, but you've learned not to trust that alone. The score will tell you the truth, or at least its version of it. Historians still argue whether quantifying the body improves well-being or quietly undermines intuition. Measurement has always changed behavior. Farmers track seasons. Sailors track stars. Now you track yourself down to the micro movements of your wrist in the dark. Your ancestors slept. You perform sleep. There's a quirky tidbit that often surprises people. Simply believing you slept poorly can make you feel worse the next day, even if objective measures show adequate rest. Researchers call this orthosomnia, an unhealthy fixation on achieving perfect sleep metrics. The tracker says your deep sleep was low, and then suddenly your perfectly functional morning feels fragile, suspicious, compromised. Soft humor slips in because it's hard not to notice the irony. Joke 1. Nothing says relaxation like a nightly performance review. Joke 2. Your body reports to your wrist now, apparently. Joke 3. You've never argued with a device more quietly than at breakfast after it tells you slept fair. Another mainstream fact drifts in. Consumer sleep trackers are improving, but they're still estimates. They infer sleep stages from movement, heart rate, and algorithms trained on population averages. They are not reading your mind, no matter how confident the app sounds. Even clinical sleep labs disagree with each other sometimes. Your wrist is doing its best. Historians still argue whether future generations will laugh at early sleep trackers the way we laugh at old medical devices. Bulky, overconfident, slightly wrong. For now, they sit in an uncomfortable space between helpful awareness and unnecessary anxiety. The line between the two depends largely on how you use them. You notice how quickly sleep becomes something to optimize. If deep sleep was low, you adjust. If REM was high, you speculate. You change bedtime, caffeine timing, room temperature, pillow angle. Some of these changes help. Some just keep your mind busy. The paradox is sharp. The more you try to control sleep, the more elusive it can become. There's debate here, and it's ongoing. Historians still argue whether self-tracking represents a return to embodied awareness or a departure from it. The sleep researchers argue whether feedback improves long-term habits or fuels hypervigilance. The data itself is neutral. Your relationship with it is not. A fringe tidbit floats in from the edges of behavioral science. People who stop checking their sleep data daily often report improved sleep satisfaction within weeks, even when objective sleep doesn't change. Without constant judgment, the night feels less pressured. Sleep, it turns out, prefers not to be micromanaged. You think about how strange it is that rest, something fundamentally passive, has become active work. You don't just sleep. You analyze, compare, benchmark. You wonder if last night was better than the night before, worse than average, good for your age. Your body, meanwhile, is just trying to do its thing. Yet another mainstream fact settles beside you. Subjective sleep quality is often a better predictor of daytime functioning than objective metrics alone. How rested you feel matters. Confidence in your sleep matters. Doubt, especially planted by numbers without context, can erode both. Historians still argue whether modern humans trust external authority more than internal signals. Your tracker says you woke up 5 times. You don't remember any of them. Did they count? Your brain says you feel okay. The app says sleep debt. Who do you believe? Soft humor drifts through again. Joke 1. Your sleep tracker has never once complimented your effort. Joke 2. Nothing humbles you like realizing your great night was algorithmically mediocre. Joke 3. The app's motivational tone feels personal when you're tired. You roll over, aren't deciding not to check yet. The night is over, but its effects are still settling. There's something to be said for letting the body speak before the data does. Hunger, alertness, mood. These signals are old, reliable, and surprisingly hard to fool. Another quirky tidbit floats by. Early sleep researchers relied almost entirely on self-report. People described how they slept, how they felt, how they dreamed. It was subjective, messy, human. Modern tools add precision, but they also risk sidelining that lived experience. Balance, as usual, is the challenge. Historians still argue whether the quantified self-movement will ultimately empower people to sleep better or entangle them in endless self-surveillance. Perhaps both. Tools amplify intent. They don't replace judgment. You stretch slightly, feeling the residue of the night. Not perfect, not terrible, just human. Sleep happened in all its uneven, adaptable glory. The device noticed. Your body lived it. Whatever strange shift is happening to human sleep, it includes this new layer of observation. Nights are no longer private in the way they once were. They generate charts, scores, trends. Some nights benefit from that, others don't. And as you lie there, eyes closed again for a moment, you make a small, quiet choice. Whether you check the data now or later, whether you adjust or ignore it, sleep itself is already done. It gave you what it could. The rest of the day will tell you more than any graph ever could. Morning light hasn't fully arrived yet, but the night's unevenness lingers in your body. You feel it differently than you used to, not just as tiredness, but as a kind of quiet unfairness. Some people seem rested, sharp, untouched by late nights and early mornings. Others move through the day foggy, paying interest on sleep they never quite received. Sleep inequality grows, and once you notice it, it's hard to ignore. One mainstream fact settles in with uncomfortable clarity. Sleep quality and duration vary dramatically by income, neighborhood, race, and job type. People working multiple jobs, night shifts, or unpredictable schedules consistently get less and worse sleep. Noisy environments, light pollution, and housing instability all chip away at rest. Sleep, it turns out, is not distributed evenly. It behaves like a resource. Historians still argue whether rest has ever been equal across societies, but there's evidence that industrialization and urbanization widen the gap. Once, everyone slept when it was dark because darkness was unavoidable. Now some people can afford quiet, climate-controlled darkness, while others sleep next to highways, sirens, or glowing streetlights that never dim. You experience this inequality even if your own nights are relatively protected. Travel makes it obvious. Different neighborhoods sound different at night. Some hum softly, others never stop shouting. Your nervous system doesn't care why the noise is there. It only knows whether it can relax. There's a quirky tidbit from urban studies that feels both obvious and depressing. People living in louder neighborhoods often report being used to it, yet their sleep architecture still shows more fragmentation. Adaptation doesn't mean immunity. It just means you stop noticing the interruptions consciously while your brain keeps reacting. Soft humor drifts in, because otherwise this would feel too heavy. Joke 1. Your body accepts no excuses for why sleep was bad. It just logs the damage. Joke 2. Earplugs are the closest thing modern society has to a sleep equalizer. Joke 3. Silence is a luxury item, apparently. Another mainstream fact slides in. Children in lower-income households average significantly less sleep than their higher-income peers. Earlier school start times, shared bedrooms, environmental stress, all of it compounds. Sleep debt begins early, long before anyone talks about productivity or optimization. Rest, like nutrition, shapes development quietly and permanently. Historians still argue whether earlier generations of children slept more due to fewer structured demands, or whether modern expectations, homework, extracurriculars, screens have crowded out the night. Either way, the consequences ripple forward. Tired children become tired adults. Cycles form. You think about how sleep advice often assumes control. Go to bed earlier. Make your room dark and quiet. Establish a routine. All good advice if you have control over your environment and schedule. If you don't, the advice lands differently. It feels less like guidance and more like judgment. There's debate here that's growing louder. Historians still argue whether public health has underestimated sleep's social determinants. For years, sleep was framed as personal responsibility. Now, researchers increasingly recognize that infrastructure, policy, and economics shape who gets rest and who doesn't. Biology responds to conditions, not intentions. A fringe tidbit floats in from the edges of public health. Some cities have experimented with quiet hours enforcement and reduced nighttime lighting, not for aesthetics, but for sleep health. Early results suggest modest improvements in community sleep quality. Small environmental changes can ripple through entire populations. You notice how exhaustion compounds disadvantage. Poor sleep affects attention, mood, and decision-making. That makes navigating an already difficult day even harder. It's not just that life stress disrupts sleep. Poor sleep makes life stress harder to escape. The loop tightens quietly. On another mainstream fact settles beside you. Chronic sleep deprivation is linked to increased risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and depression. These conditions also disproportionately affect disadvantaged groups. Sleep is not the sole cause, but it's part of the web. Pull one thread and others move. Historians still argue whether future societies will treat sleep as a public good, like clean water or safe streets, or continue to treat it as a personal lifestyle choice. The science is leaning one way. Policy often lags behind. Soft humor returns gently. Joke 1. Sleep when you're dead turns out to be a terrible public health slogan. Joke 2. Nothing exposes inequality faster than who gets to be tired safely. Joke 3. Naps are celebrated until someone actually needs them. Issue reflect on your own nights, where you have choice and where you don't. Even small advantages add up. A door that closes, a thermostat you control, a schedule with some flexibility. None of it guarantees perfect sleep, but it tilts the odds. Another quirky tidbit drifts by. In surveys, people often rate sleep as less important than diet or exercise. Yet when asked what they'd fix first if they could, many choose sleep. Instinct knows what science confirms. Rest underpins everything else. Historians still argue whether the modern sleep gap will widen or narrow with technology. Remote work helps some. Gig work harms others. Light pollution spreads even as blackout curtains sell better than ever. Progress is uneven. You settle back into the mattress, aware that this conversation isn't abstract. Sleep inequality isn't about willpower. It's about conditions. Some nights are easier than others because some lives are. Whatever strange transformation is happening to human sleep, it's not happening equally. Some people lose minutes, others lose hours. Some lose the sense that rest is even possible. And as you lie there listening to the quiet you're lucky enough to have, you feel a mix of gratitude and resolve. Sleep is personal, yes, but it's also collective. The night treats everyone the same. Society does not. The room stays still. Your breathing stays slow. And for now at least, rest is within reach. The night has moved on, but the ripple spreads outward, to smaller beds, earlier mornings, and brains that are still under construction. Kids wired, tired is not just a catchy phrase. It's a quiet shift happening in bedrooms lit by nightlights, tablets, showing the soft glow leaking under doors long after bedtime stories are done. One mainstream fact settles in gently but firmly. Children and adolescents today sleep significantly less than recommended for healthy development. Early school start times, increased academic pressure, extracurricular schedules, and evening screen use all contribute. Teenage circadian rhythms naturally drift later, yet the world insists they wake earlier. Biology and alarm clocks are not on speaking terms. Historians still argue whether childhood used to be a more sleep-protected phase of life or whether nostalgia smooths over plenty of yawning mornings. But there's strong evidence that modern stimulation levels are unprecedented. Children once got bored. Boredom nudged sleep. Now boredom is hunted down and eliminated with remarkable efficiency. So you can almost feel it. The restless energy of young minds that have consumed an entire day of information, color, sound, and social input. Their bodies are tired, but their brains are still buzzing, replaying videos, messages, and imagined scenarios. Bedtime becomes negotiation instead of surrender. There's a quirky tidbit pediatric sleep researchers often mention. Children exposed to screens in the evening don't just fall asleep later. They experience lighter sleep overall. Their brains spend less time in deep restorative stages. They may sleep the same number of hours technically, but wake up less refreshed. The difference shows up in mood, attention, and learning. Not always immediately, but persistently. Soft humor drifts in because otherwise this feels too close to home. Joke 1. Children can fall asleep anywhere except when they're supposed to. Joke 2. Nothing makes a child suddenly energetic like the announcement of bedtime. Joke 3. Just one more episode is apparently written into child development somewhere. Another mainstream fact slips in. Chronic sleep restriction in children is linked to increased risk of anxiety, depression, behavioral challenges, and academic difficulties. Sleep isn't just rest. It's when the developing brain prunes connections, strengthens memory, and calibrates emotion. When that time shrinks, the effects echo through the day. Historians still argue whether earlier generations of children slept more because their days were more physically demanding or because evenings were less stimulating. Probably both. Physical exhaustion paired well with darkness. Modern fatigue is often mental, and mental fatigue doesn't always translate into easy sleep. You notice how adult schedules spill downward. Late dinners, late work, late scrolling. Children absorb these rhythms without choice. Bedtime shifts later, not because they need less sleep, but because the household never fully powers down. The night is noisy with adult concerns, even when unspoken. A fringe tidbit floats in from developmental psychology. Consistent bedtime routines matter more for children than exact bedtimes. Predictability tells the nervous system it's safe to let go. Not rigid perfection, just reliable cues. The brain relaxes when it knows what comes next. Historians still argue whether modern parenting styles unintentionally erode these cues. Flexibility, responsiveness, enrichment, all well-intentioned, sometimes crowd out stillness. The line between engagement and overstimulation is thin, especially after sunset. You think about how tired children look different from tired adults. Less slow, more volatile. Emotions swing faster. Tears arrive without warning. Sleep debt in young brains often masquerades as misbehavior. The body is asking for rest in the only language it has. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Adolescents are particularly vulnerable. Puberty shifts circadian timing later, yet early school start times force chronic misalignment. Researchers have found that delaying school start times improves attendance, mood, and academic performance. The science is clear. Implementation is complicated. Soft humor returns gently. Joke 1. Teenagers are biologically nocturnal for a few years, much to everyone's surprise. Joke 2. Waking a teen early is an extreme sport. Joke 3. No one has ever solved adolescence by removing sleep. Historians still argue whether future education systems will adapt to biological reality or continue asking young brains to perform while half asleep. For now, many kids live in a constant state of social jet lag, waking before their bodies are ready and catching up on weekends like tiny shift workers. Another quirky tidbit drifts by. Children who sleep well don't just behave better, they report feeling safer. Sleep supports emotional regulation, which supports a basic sense of security. Rest is not indulgent, it's foundational. You let that sink in. The strange thing happening to human sleep isn't skipping the young, it's shaping them. The patterns they learn now, how nights feel, how tired is normal, may follow them for decades, and as the room stays quiet, you imagine a different night. Dimmer lights, slower evenings, fewer negotiations, more surrender. Not perfect, just gentler. Sleep, after all, is one of the first rhythms humans learn. When it frays early, the whole song changes. The night breathes on. And somewhere, a smaller brain finally lets go, drifting into the deep, necessary dark. The night feels different as years stack up. You notice it first in small ways. Lighter sleep, earlier awakenings, the sense that your brain clocks in before you're ready. Aging brains awake more easily, and once you see the pattern, it explains a lot of quiet, early mornings you never asked for. One mainstream fact settles in without drama. As people age, total sleep time tends to decrease, and sleep becomes more fragmented. Deep, slow-wave sleep, the heavy restorative kind, shrinks steadily from early adulthood onward. This isn't a personal failure or sign you're doing something wrong. It's a biological shift, built into how the brain changes over time. Historians still argue whether older adults in pre-industrial societies slept better or simply slept differently, but descriptions from diaries and letters suggest that early waking was common. Sunrise mattered more when daylight governed work. Waking early wasn't insomnia, it was alignment. Today, early waking often collides with expectations to stay asleep longer, making it feel like something is broken. You feel it in the way sleep loosens its grip. Sounds intrude more easily. Thoughts slip in faster. Once awake, it's harder to drift back under, because the brain doesn't generate the same depth of sleep pressure it once did. Adenosine still builds, but the system that responds to it is less dramatic, less forceful. There's a quirky tidbit from neuroscience that feels oddly reassuring. Older brains often compensate for reduced deep sleep by becoming more efficient during wakefulness. Memory consolidation changes strategy. Instead of relying heavily on slow-wave sleep, the brain leans more on lighter stages in waking rehearsal. Different tools, same goal. Adaptation, not decline. Soft humor drifts in because this realization benefits from it. Joke 1. Your brain starts treating sleep like a nap it might take later. Joke 2. Waking up early becomes less impressive when it's involuntary. Joke 3. You don't need an alarm anymore. Your circadian rhythm has taken the job. And another mainstream fact slips in. Circadian rhythms shift earlier with age. The internal clock advances, nudging sleep and wake times forward. This is why many older adults feel sleepy earlier in the evening and wake earlier in the morning. Society often labels this as sleep problems, but biologically it's closer to a phase shift. Historians still argue whether modern lighting exaggerates this shift or whether it simply makes it more noticeable. Bright evenings can push bedtime later, while the internal clock still wants an early morning. The result is shorter nights and a sense of chronic underrest, even when bedtime discipline is solid. You notice how aging sleep feels lighter, more watchful. There's less of that disappearing act where hours vanish without memory. Instead, sleep comes in layers, with frequent check-ins. As your brain seems to ask, everything okay? More often, it's not anxiety, just vigilance refined by experience. A fringe tidbit floats in from gerontology. Daytime napping increases with age, not always as compensation for poor sleep, but as a natural redistribution of rest. Many cultures normalize this. Others treat it like a character flaw. Biology, again, does not care about branding. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Certain hormones involved in sleep regulation, including melatonin, are produced in lower amounts with age. The signal for night becomes quieter. Darkness still matters, routines still help, but the chemistry itself is softer, less insistent. Historians still argue whether melatonin supplementation meaningfully improves sleep quality in older adults. Results are mixed. Timing matters more than dose, while context matters more than pills. The lesson repeats, sleep is orchestration, not a single switch. Soft humor returns gently. Joke 1, your bladder becomes a surprisingly reliable alarm clock. Joke 2, sleeping through the night becomes a historical anecdote. Joke 3, you wake up early enough to feel morally superior briefly. You also notice how aging changes what wakes you. Physical discomfort intrudes more easily. Joints speak up. Temperature regulation shifts. The body, less forgiving of extremes, asks for more careful conditions. Sleep becomes less automatic and more collaborative. Another mainstream fact slides in. Chronic pain and medical conditions increase with age and are strongly linked to sleep disruption. It's not always the brain keeping you awake. Sometimes it's the body negotiating for comfort. Sleep medicine increasingly recognizes that treating pain often improves sleep more than traditional sleep aids. Historians still argue whether earlier societies accepted nighttime wakefulness as normal aging or whether they worried about it the way we do now. Expectation shapes experience. When you expect to sleep like a 25-year-old forever, biology feels like betrayal. When you expect change, it feels like adjustment. A quirky tidbit drifts by. Older adults often report that although they sleep less, they worry less about it. Perspective shifts. The pressure to optimize fades. Sleep becomes something you work with, not dominate. Paradoxically, this acceptance can improve sleep quality. You feel this tension yourself, the desire for the sleep you used to have and the reality of the sleep you have now. And nostalgia is a powerful disruptor. Your brain remembers deep, oblivious nights and asks why they're gone, ignoring the decades of wear and wisdom that came with them. Another mainstream fact settles in. Cognitive decline is linked to sleep quality, but the relationship is complex. Good sleep supports brain health, yet aging brains change sleep architecture regardless. The goal isn't to restore youth, but to support function, alertness, mood, memory within new parameters. Historians still argue whether modern fear around aging and sleep is amplified by performance culture. Every deviation from ideal metrics feels alarming. Older sleep doesn't look like younger sleep, and it doesn't need to. Different stage, different needs. Soft humor again, because it helps. Joke 1. You wake early, but at least the coffee tastes earned. We joke 2. Naps feel rebellious when you're told you should need less rest. Joke 3. Your body knows exactly when dawn is, whether you asked or not. You breathe into the stillness of early morning. Birds begin their negotiations outside. The world hasn't fully started yet, neither have you. This quiet hour belongs to aging sleep, the lighter, earlier, more segmented kind that still does its job, just differently. Whatever strange shift is happening to human sleep, aging is part of the story. Not a breakdown, but a retuning. The melody changes, the tempo shifts, but the music continues. And as you rest here, eyes closed or open, not forcing anything, you feel a calm recognition. Sleep doesn't abandon you with age. It evolves. It asks for patience, flexibility, and a gentler contract. The night loosens its hold. Morning waits. And you, awake a little earlier than planned, drift in that in-between space. Resting, not rushing, letting this version of sleep be enough. The night feels older here, as if the walls have stepped back and given you a wider view. What evolution expects is not 8 hours on a memory foam mattress under blackout curtains. It expects something rougher, looser, and far less optimized. As you lie still, you sense the mismatch, not as failure, but as context. One mainstream fact settles in calmly. The human sleep-wake cycle evolved long before electricity, clocks, or standardized schedules. For most of our species' history, sleep was governed by light, temperature, safety, and social cues. Sunset didn't mean bedtime, but it did mean dimming. Dawn didn't require an alarm. It arrived on its own terms, gradual and unavoidable. Historians still argue about the exact shape of ancestral sleep, how long it lasted, how consolidated it was. But there's agreement on one point: it was flexible. Humans adapted sleep to environment, season, and circumstance. Some nights were long and deep, others were short, broken, or shared. Variability wasn't a bug, it was the system. You imagine those nights now, firelight flickering, never very bright, casting soft shadows that move slowly, the smell of smoke, the quiet sounds of others breathing nearby. Sleep came in waves, not blocks. Waking in the night wasn't alarming, it was expected. You'd listen, adjust the fire, maybe speak softly, then drift again. There's a quirky tidbit from anthropology that often surprises people. Many hunter-gatherer groups don't sleep in total darkness. Low-level light and ambient noise are normal. A total sensory shutdown, the kind modern bedrooms aim for, may actually be unfamiliar to the brain. Silence, absolute and complete, can feel uncanny. Another mainstream fact slides in. Humans are light sleepers by design. We wake easily to unfamiliar sounds, changes in temperature, or movement. This trait likely improves survival. Deep, oblivious sleep every night would have been risky. Your restless moments at 3 a.m. are not malfunctions. They're echoes. Historians still argue whether the rise of agriculture fundamentally changed sleep or simply reshaped it. Farming introduced early mornings and seasonal labor spikes. Sleep bent again, adapting to new demands. Evolution didn't stop. It negotiated. Soft humor drifts in because perspective helps. Joke 1. Your ancestors did not track REM cycles. Joke 2. Sleep hygiene once meant not letting the fire go out. Joke 3. No one worried about screen time unless the screen was a swarm of insects. You feel the contrast sharply? Modern sleep asks for consistency above all else. Same bedtime, same wake time, same environment. Your biology, meanwhile, evolved for responsiveness. It expects nights to differ, some short, some long, some quiet, some alert. The problem isn't variability, it's relentless misalignment. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Circadian rhythms synchronize best with strong daytime light and dark nights. Ancestors had both in abundance. Modern humans often have neither. Dim days indoors and bright nights under LEDs. The signal weakens at both ends. Your clock struggles not because it's fragile, but because the cues are muddy. Historians still argue whether modern sleep issues stem more from light, timing, or social pressure. Evolution doesn't care which lever you pull. It responds to the total pattern. You notice how modern nights demand vigilance for abstract threats, deadlines, reputations, futures, rather than immediate ones. Your brain doesn't distinguish well. Threat is threat. Cortisol rises either way. The body prepares you to act, not to rest. A fringe tidbit floats in from evolutionary psychology. Humans may have evolved to sleep more lightly when under social or environmental stress. Vigilance increases when conditions feel unstable. If the modern world feels perpetually unstable, lighter sleep may be a rational response. Soft humor again? Gentle. Joke 1. Your brain still thinks you might need to outrun something tomorrow. And joke 2. Spreadsheets trigger fight or flight more than lions ever did. Joke 3. Evolution did not anticipate push notifications. You breathe slower now. Perspective loosens the tightness. The problem isn't that you're bad at sleeping. It's that you're very good at being human in a very strange environment. Another mainstream fact slides in. When people spend time camping without artificial light, their sleep timing shifts earlier and becomes more regular within days. No apps, no trackers, just light and dark doing their old work. The system still functions. It just needs clearer instructions. Historians still argue whether modern society could ever recreate those conditions at scale. Maybe not. But understanding what evolution expects can soften self-blame. Sleep isn't broken, it's negotiating. And now, as promised, the night slows even further. Your breathing lengthens. Sentences stretch. The sharp edges of thought round off. You don't need to solve anything here. You don't need to fix sleep for the rest of your life tonight. You only need to let this moment be what it is. Imagine the night widening, not closing in. The dark is not empty. It's protective. Your body recognizes it, even now. Muscles soften without instruction. Your jaw unclenches. The small muscles around your eyes let go. Whatever your ancestors did at this hour, tending embers, listening for footsteps, sharing quiet, they trusted the night enough to rest within it. You can borrow that trust. You don't need their life, just their permission. The world will not be solved before morning. That's not your job. Your job is simpler. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the weight of your body sink fully into the surface beneath you. If thoughts drift through, let them pass like animals at the edge of firelight. Notice them without rising to meet them. They don't require action. They don't require judgment. Sleep does not need to be chased. It knows where you are. And as the last tension loosens, as awareness thins and sensation softens, you drift closer to the kind of rest your species has always known. Not perfect, not measured, but enough. Enough to restore. Enough to continue. Enough for tonight. The calm lingers, but the modern world doesn't stay quiet for long. Even here, even now, promises drift through the darkness. Pills, powders, promises, solutions lined up neatly on shelves and screens. Each one whispering that sleep could be easier, deeper, faster if you just add this one thing. One mainstream fact settles in carefully. The global sleep aid market has grown rapidly over the past 2 decades. Prescription medications, over-the-counter pills, supplements, teas, gummies, sprays. There are more options than ever designed to push you toward unconsciousness. Insomnia, once a private frustration, is now a commercial opportunity. Historians still argue whether humans have always sought chemical shortcuts to sleep, or whether this explosion is uniquely modern. Alcohol, herbs, and opiates have been used for centuries, but never with such precision marketing. Never with influencer testimonials promising the best sleep of your life in pastel packaging. You feel the appeal. When sleep feels fragile, anything that offers certainty is tempting. The idea that rest could be swallowed, measured, sure and guaranteed is deeply soothing. No negotiation, no waiting, just lights out on demand. Your nervous system, tired of effort, wants to believe. There's a quirky tidbit tucked into pharmacology textbooks. Many sleeping pills don't create natural sleep. They induce sedation, a state that looks like sleep from the outside but behaves differently in the brain. EEG patterns shift. Memory processing changes. You're unconscious, yes, but not always restored. Another mainstream fact follows closely. Long-term use of many sleep medications is associated with tolerance and dependence. The same dose works less well over time. Stopping can make sleep temporarily worse than before. The body adapts quickly to chemical nudges, adjusting its balance behind the scenes. My historians still argue whether modern medicine over-medicalized sleep problems or simply responded to real suffering with the tools available. Likely both. When someone hasn't slept properly in months, philosophy offers little comfort. Relief matters. Context matters too. Soft humor drifts in because the night can handle it. Joke 1. If supplements worked exactly as advertised, no one would be awake to write reviews. Joke 2. Natural is doing a lot of work on those labels. Joke 3. Nothing says calm like a pill bottle that rattles ominously at bedtime. You think about melatonin, the most popular promise of all. It's sold as a sleep hormone, which is technically true but incomplete. Melatonin doesn't knock you out. It shifts timing. It whispers night to the brain. Taken at the wrong hour, it can confuse more than help. As taken at the right hour in small doses, it can gently realign a drifting clock. Dose and timing matter more than enthusiasm. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Many people take far higher melatonin doses than necessary. More isn't better. It can lead to vivid dreams, grogginess, and that strange hungover feeling in the morning. The hormone is subtle by design. Flooding the system blunts its usefulness. Historians still argue whether supplements should be regulated like medications. Quality varies. Labels aren't always accurate. What you swallow may not be exactly what you think. Sleep, once again, becomes a trust exercise. A fringe tidbit floats in from the edges of neuroscience. Some sedatives reduce REM sleep significantly. Dreams fade. Emotional processing shifts. People may sleep longer but feel oddly flat over time. In the night loses some of its internal work. Rest becomes quieter, but thinner. You notice how the language around sleep aids mirrors productivity culture. Knock yourself out. Power down. Force rest. None of it sounds gentle. None of it sounds like the kind of surrender sleep evolved from. It sounds like control, exerted one last time before giving up. Another mainstream fact slides in. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, often outperforms medication in the long term. Not because it's easy, but because it works with the brain's learning systems instead of overriding them. Habits, associations, timing. Boring, unglamorous, effective. Historians still argue whether future medicine will move away from sedatives toward behavioral and environmental approaches. The trend is there, but slow. Pills are simpler than patience. Markets prefer simplicity. Soft humor returns lightly. Joke 1. Nothing cures insomnia faster than reading medication side effect lists. Joke 2. Your brain remembers every sleep aid that didn't work vividly. Joke 3. The phrase non-habit forming is doing its best. You don't judge the desire for help. Wanting sleep is not weakness. Exhaustion erodes compassion, for yourself most of all. Sometimes medication is appropriate. Sometimes it's life-saving. The problem isn't the tool, it's the expectation that the tool can replace the whole system. Another quirky tidbit drifts by. Placebo effects in sleep studies are strong. Believing something will help you sleep often improves sleep on its own. Expectation shapes physiology. Hope relaxes the nervous system. The brain listens closely to reassurance. Historians still argue whether ancient rituals, herbs, chants, routines, worked partly because of belief. Likely yes. The mind has always been part of the medicine. You lie here not reaching for anything, just noticing the impulse, the desire for certainty, the wish for a switch. Sleep has never really worked that way. It's more like weather than machinery. You prepare conditions. You don't command outcomes. Whatever strange changes are happening to human sleep, the marketplace has rushed in to fill the discomfort. Some offerings help, some distract. None replace the slow, unglamorous work of aligning body, mind, and night. Your breathing stays slow. Your body stays heavy. No promise is required right now. Sleep, unbottled and unbranded, is already doing what it knows how to do, arriving when the pressure eases, not when it's forced. And as the night holds you, empty-handed and unoptimized, rest settles in again, quiet, imperfect, and real. Somewhere between rest and productivity, a tempting idea keeps resurfacing. What if you didn't need all that sleep? What if you could break it apart, compress it, outsmart it? Naps and polyphasic myths drift through the night like clever loopholes, promising more hours awake and fewer spent unconscious. Your tired brain listens, intrigued. One mainstream fact settles in first, gently grounding things. Short daytime naps, 20 to 30 minutes, can improve alertness, mood, and reaction time, especially in sleep-deprived individuals. This isn't controversial. It's well documented. The brain likes brief rest. A well-timed nap can feel like a reset button, clearing some of the fog without fully powering down the system. And historians still argue whether humans naturally napped throughout history or whether it depended on climate and labor patterns. In hotter regions, midday rest was common. In agricultural societies, work often paused when the sun was harshest. Napping wasn't laziness, it was adaptation. You feel the appeal immediately. A nap is kind, forgiving. It doesn't demand a full night's commitment. It asks for a couch, a quiet corner, a brief truce with the world. When you wake, there's often that soft, disoriented sweetness, the sense of having been somewhere else briefly, without fully leaving. There's a quirky tidbit sleep scientists like to mention. Naps longer than about 60 to 90 minutes can include deep sleep, which may lead to sleep inertia, grogginess, confusion, the strong urge to argue with reality. The nap itself wasn't wrong. When the timing just slipped, naps are powerful, but they're blunt instruments. Soft humor drifts in because naps deserve it. Joke 1. The best nap is the one you weren't supposed to take. Joke 2. Nothing feels more rebellious than sleeping during daylight. Joke 3. I'll just rest my eyes has never been honest. Then there's the more ambitious promise, the polyphasic dream. Sleep broken into multiple short segments across the day. 4 hours at night, power naps every few hours, endless productivity, viral schedules named after geniuses and historical figures, many of whom did not in fact follow those schedules. One mainstream fact pushes back quietly but firmly. There is no strong scientific evidence that extreme polyphasic sleep schedules are sustainable or healthy for most people. However, studies consistently show that total sleep time matters. Compress it too far, and cognitive performance, mood, and health decline, even if you feel temporarily adapted. Historians still argue whether famous polyphasic sleepers truly existed or whether biographies exaggerated eccentric habits into heroic narratives. Historical figures wrote letters at odd hours. That doesn't mean they thrived on 2 hours of sleep in a dream. You notice how seductive the myth is. Sleep is framed as inefficient, something to minimize. Polyphasic schedules appeal to the same part of the mind that loves hacks, shortcuts, and optimization. The idea that you could bend biology to your will is intoxicating, especially when you're already tired and frustrated. So a fringe tidbit floats in from chronobiology. Some animals naturally sleep polyphasically, many short bouts instead of one long block. Humans, however, evolved toward a mostly monophasic or biphasic pattern. Your brain architecture, hormone rhythms, and memory consolidation processes are tuned to longer stretches of sleep. Copying a cat is not a career strategy. Soft humor again, because this deserves it. Joke 1. If polyphasic sleep worked perfectly, everyone would already be doing it. Joke 2. Your body did not sign up for a startup culture experiment. Joke 3. Hustle sleep sounds like something evolution would quietly sabotage. Another mainstream fact slides in. While naps can partially compensate for sleep loss, they rarely replace the benefits of a full night's sleep. When deep, slow-wave sleep and REM sleep follow specific patterns across the night. Chop the night into fragments, and those patterns suffer. Memory, emotional regulation, and physical recovery pay the price. Historians still argue whether segmented sleep, 2 blocks at night with a waking interval, is being confused with polyphasic sleep. The former may have been common historically. The latter, with many short naps and minimal total sleep, is largely modern invention. The difference matters. You think about how naps feel when you're well rested versus when you're exhausted. When rested, a nap is optional. When exhausted, it's desperate. Polyphasic schedules often emerge from exhaustion, dressed up as ambition. The body knows the difference even if the calendar doesn't. A quirky tidbit drifts by. Elite athletes nap strategically. Not because they want to sleep less, but because they sleep more. Naps supplement already long nights. They add rest. They don't replace it. Recovery is not something professionals skimp on, no matter how glamorous the myth. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Chronic sleep restriction impairs judgment about sleep itself. Tired brains overestimate their performance and underestimate their impairment. You feel fine. Your reaction time, emotional stability, and memory quietly disagree. Confidence rises as capacity falls. It's a dangerous combo. Historians still argue whether modern culture rewards visible output over invisible recovery. Naps don't photograph well. Rest doesn't post easily. Productivity myths spread faster than biological reality, especially when algorithms reward extremes. Soft humor returns lightly. Joke 1. The body treats sleep hacks like prank calls. Joke 2. Naps are great until they ruin your night, which feels personal. Joke 3. Every nap is either perfect or a mistake. There is no middle ground. You sense the truth settling in. Naps aren't the enemy. Myths are. Sleep is not optional, not negotiable in the long term, and not something you can indefinitely break into smaller pieces without consequences. Flexibility is human. Deprivation is not. Another mainstream fact slides in. People who regularly nap late in the afternoon often experience delayed nighttime sleep, especially if they're sensitive to circadian shifts. Naps are best earlier, shorter, and intentional. Timing matters more than philosophy. Historians still argue whether future work cultures will normalize naps or continue to glorify sleeplessness. With some companies install nap pods, others quietly punish their use. The message is mixed, but biology is consistent. You breathe, feeling the gentle weight of the night. You don't need to hack sleep. You don't need to outsmart it. You don't need a schedule named after a Renaissance polymath. Sleep is not a puzzle to solve. It's a relationship to maintain. Whatever strange changes are happening to human sleep, The desire to minimize it is part of the confusion. Rest isn't lost time. It's what makes time usable. And as you settle deeper, the idea of shortcuts fades. Tonight doesn't need efficiency. It needs patience. No naps to plan, no schedules to test. Just the steady, familiar pull of sleep, asking only that you let it do its full, necessary work. The night carries a memory now, shared by nearly everyone. Oh, even if no one talks about it much anymore. Pandemic time warp still bends sleep in strange ways. You felt it when days blurred, when mornings lost their edges, when bedtime slid without resistance, because nowhere required you to be at dawn. Time softened, then warped, and sleep went with it. One mainstream fact settles in slowly. During the global pandemic, average sleep timing shifted later across many populations. People went to bed later, woke later, and reported more vivid dreams and fragmented nights. Total sleep time sometimes increased, but sleep quality often did not. Routine vanished, and circadian rhythms loosened their grip. Historians still argue whether this period will be remembered as a sleep renaissance or a sleep rupture. For some, the removal of commutes and rigid schedules allowed rest to bloom. For others, anxiety, isolation, and uncertainty shredded the night. The same disruption produced opposite outcomes depending on circumstance. You remember how clocks lost authority. Without external anchors, days felt interchangeable. Weekends dissolved into weekdays. Pajamas became all-day wear. Your brain relies on contrast, light versus dark, work versus rest, to tell time internally. When contrast disappeared, so did clarity. There's a quirky tidbit sleep researchers noticed with surprise. Many people developed free-running sleep schedules, drifting later each day, especially those already prone to night owl tendencies. Without social obligations, the internal clock revealed its preferences. Biology, unmasked, spoke honestly. Soft humor drifts in because hindsight allows it. Joke 1. Time meant nothing except somehow it was always Tuesday. Shot joke 2. Bedtime became a suggestion, not a rule. Joke 3. You've never slept more yet felt so disoriented. Another mainstream fact slides in. Increased stress during the pandemic correlated strongly with insomnia symptoms. Worries about health, finances, and loved ones activated the nervous system at night. Even people who slept longer often reported lighter, less restorative sleep. Duration alone didn't equal rest. Historians still argue whether collective trauma leaves long-term signatures in sleep patterns. Wars, plagues, and economic collapses all disrupted nights in their time. The pandemic may join that lineage. Sleep remembers what societies would rather forget. You felt anxiety differently then. Nights were quiet in an unnatural way. Cities hushed. Sirens punctured the silence. The absence of normal noise made every sound louder. Sleep, which depends on safety cues, struggled to interpret the new landscape. A fringe tidbit floats in from chronobiology. Social jet lag, the mismatch between biological and social time, temporarily decreased for some people working from home. Night owls thrived without early alarms. Others, lacking structure, spiraled. Sleep needs scaffolding. Freedom alone isn't enough. Soft humor again, gentle. Joke 1. You discovered your true bedtime and immediately ignored it. Joke 2. Naps multiplied without supervision. Joke 3. The concept of too late quietly retired. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. As routines returned, many people struggled to readjust their sleep schedules. Circadian rhythms don't snap back. They shift gradually. The return to early mornings felt harsher than before, as if sleep had become more fragile during its time untethered. Historians still argue whether the pandemic permanently altered work culture enough to reshape sleep long-term. Remote and hybrid models persist. Some commutes never returned. The clock lost a bit of its power, but not entirely. You notice remnants of that era even now. Bedtime flexibility, blurred evenings, a lingering sense that tomorrow might not require the same precision it once did. Sleep learned new habits during the disruption, and habits once learned are slow to unlearn. Another quirky tidbit drifts by. Dream content during the pandemic often featured themes of confinement loss of control, and endless journeys. The brain processes collective experience alongside personal memory. Your dreams were not just yours. Another mainstream fact slides in. People who reestablish strong morning routines, light exposure, consistent wake times, recovered sleep stability faster. Mornings, not nights, turned out to be the lever. The clock listens most carefully at dawn. Historians still argue whether future disruptions, climate events, technological shifts will trigger similar sleep distortions. Likely yes. Sleep is sensitive to uncertainty. It bends before it breaks. You breathe into that understanding. The strange thing happening to human sleep isn't just gradual erosion. It's shock and recovery over and over. The pandemic was a stress test, revealing how dependent sleep is on structure, safety, and shared time. Soft humor returns quietly. Joke 1. Your body remembers the chaos even if your calendar pretends it's over. Was joke 2. Back to normal is not a circadian instruction. Joke 3. Time will never fully unwarp, and that's oddly okay. You feel the night steady itself again? This moment has boundaries. The room is familiar. Tomorrow has a shape. Sleep like shapes. It relaxes when it knows where the edges are. Whatever long shadow that global pause cast on sleep, you're here now, breathing slowly, letting tonight be tonight. Not a replay, not a rehearsal. The clock ticks, gently this time. Not demanding, just marking. Your body listens, recognizes the rhythm, and settles. Pandemic time bent sleep, revealed it, stressed it, but it didn't destroy it. The system adapted, as it always does. And as you drift, you sense that adaptability in yourself. The night is no longer unmoored. It's holding you again, steady enough, familiar enough, ready to let you rest. Even now, in what should be darkness, the sky never fully goes black. Cities that never dim glow upward, outward, a soft orange haze reflecting off clouds like a permanent artificial dawn. You don't have to live downtown to feel it. The night leaks light everywhere, and your body notices, even when your mind has learned to ignore it. One mainstream fact settles in with a quiet weight. Light pollution has increased dramatically over the past century, with most people in industrialized countries now living under skies that never reach natural darkness. Streetlights, billboards, office buildings, parking lots, all of them contribute to a constant, low-level brightness that pushes against the night's original role. Historians still argue whether humans once feared true darkness more than we do now. But darkness was once unavoidable. Night meant limited visibility, slower movement, enforced rest. Today, darkness feels optional, even suspicious. We engineer it away, then wonder why sleep resists. You experience this glow as subtle intrusion. The room is dark, technically, but not truly. Light slips through curtains. LEDs blink from electronics. The sky outside pulses faintly, as if the city itself is breathing. Your eyelids are closed, yet your brain registers that something is still on. There's a quirky tidbit from sleep research that surprises people. Even very dim light at night can influence circadian rhythms. Light levels low enough to read a book by moonlight can still suppress melatonin slightly. It doesn't take stadium brightness to confuse the clock. It just takes persistence. Soft humor drifts in. What? Because the absurdity is real. Joke 1. Your body knows it's night, but the city refuses to agree. Joke 2. Blackout curtains are basically urban survival gear. Joke 3. You've never been more aware of tiny LEDs than when trying to sleep. Another mainstream fact slides in. Exposure to outdoor nighttime light is associated with later bedtimes and shorter sleep duration, even after accounting for lifestyle factors. This effect shows up in large population studies, not just in people who complain about it. Your circadian rhythm is not dramatic, it's statistical. Historians still argue whether ancient cities, lit by torches and oil lamps, created similar problems. Evidence suggests the scale was vastly different. Firelight was localized and warm. Modern light is broad, blue-shifted, and relentless. The night sky used to dominate cities. Watch now, cities dominate the night sky. You feel how artificial night stretches the evening. Dinner runs late. Conversations drift. Productivity bleeds into hours that once belonged to rest. Light gives permission. Permission to continue, to extend, to delay. Your brain interprets brightness as opportunity. A fringe tidbit floats in from environmental science. Some animals in urban areas alter their sleep patterns entirely, becoming nocturnal or losing clear rest cycles due to constant illumination. Birds sing earlier. Insects swarm longer. Humans are not exempt from this reshaping. We're just better at pretending we are. Soft humor again, lightly. Joke 1. Your circadian rhythm would like to speak to the city planner. Joke 2. Night mode is doing its best against an entire skyline. Joke 3. The moon is working overtime and still losing. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Darker sleeping environments are associated with better sleep quality, independent of noise and temperature. It's not just about comfort, it's about signal clarity. Darkness tells your brain, unequivocally, that it's safe to power down. Historians still argue whether the cultural shift toward brighter nights was inevitable or simply convenient. Light equals safety. Light equals commerce. Light equals progress. Sleep rarely gets a vote in these decisions. You notice how much effort it takes now to recreate night. Curtains, eye masks, lamp choices, settings toggled and untoggled. Sleep used to be ambient. Now it's engineered. Your ancestors waited for night. You build it. A quirky tidbit drifts by. In some rural areas where light pollution is minimal, people report feeling sleepier earlier without changing behavior. The sky itself cues rest. Stars emerge. Contrast sharpens. The body responds without instruction. Another mainstream fact slides in. Exposure to bright light in the morning can help counteract light pollution at night by strengthening circadian rhythms overall. The system works on contrast. Strong days make dark nights matter again. Historians still argue whether future cities will design lighting with circadian health in mind. Amber streetlights, dimming schedules, targeted illumination instead of blanket glow. The technology exists. The will is uneven. Soft humor returns gently. Joke 1. Your sleep is competing with an entire city's aesthetic choices. Joke 2. The stars would like a comeback tour. Joke 3. Darkness has become a niche experience. You breathe, noticing how your body settles despite it all. Humans adapt. We always have. But adaptation comes with cost, and light is one of the quietest costs of modern life. It doesn't shout, it hums. Whatever strange shift is happening to human sleep, cities play a starring role. They rewrite night, then ask bodies built for darkness to perform under glowing skies. And as you lie here, cocooned as best you can, you imagine a truer night, deep, enveloping, star-filled. Your body recognizes the image instantly. Something ancient relaxes. The city outside keeps shining. Inside, you dim as much as possible. Sometimes that's enough. Sleep, practiced under artificial stars, still finds you. Not because the night is perfect, but because your body remembers what darkness is supposed to mean, even when it has to imagine it. The night stretches backward now, away from streetlights and schedules, toward older habits the body still half remembers. Ancient sleep patterns surface quietly, not as instructions, but as echoes. You don't consciously think about them, yet sometimes when you wake in the middle of the night and feel oddly calm, you're brushing against something very old. One mainstream fact settles in with a sense of continuity. Historical records suggest that many people in pre-industrial Europe practiced segmented sleep, a first sleep and a second sleep, separated by a period of quiet wakefulness. Diaries, court documents, and medical texts mention this interval casually, as if everyone knew what it was. Waking at night wasn't insomnia. It was just night. Historians still argue how widespread this pattern truly was, and whether it applied across cultures, but the references are too consistent to ignore. People would wake after a few hours, pray, reflect, talk softly, tend fires, or even visit neighbors. Then when sleep pressure returned, they'd drift back under until dawn. You recognize the feeling, that calm, alert pocket at 2 or 3 a.m. when your mind feels clear instead of frantic. Modern advice tells you to panic at that moment. to label it a problem, to force sleep back immediately. But in another era, this wakefulness would have been expected, even useful. There's a quirky tidbit historians love. Some old medical texts warned that skipping the first sleep was unhealthy. The night was thought to need structure, just like the day. Missing that early rest was seen as disruptive, not admirable. Imagine telling that to someone bragging about staying up past midnight now. Soft humor drifts in because perspective deserves it. Joke 1. Medieval peasants would be deeply unimpressed by your sleep tracker. Joke 2. Waking at night used to be a feature, not a bug. Joke 3. Insomnia is partly a branding issue. Another mainstream fact slides in. Humans are social sleepers. For most of history, people slept near others. Family, community, even animals. Solitary sleep in silent, sealed rooms is relatively new. Your brain evolved expecting subtle cues of safety, breathing nearby, shared warmth, familiar sounds. Historians still argue whether communal sleeping improved sleep quality or simply reflected necessity. But anthropological studies of contemporary traditional societies show similar patterns. Sleep is lighter, more flexible, and often interwoven with social presence. Deep unconsciousness every night was not the goal. Survival was. You feel how modern isolation at night can amplify wakefulness. Alone in the dark, the mind fills the space. A slight sound becomes suspicious. A stray thought grows louder. Your ancestors, surrounded by others, could listen without alarm. Someone else was awake too. A fringe tidbit floats in from anthropology. Some cultures viewed the nighttime wake period as ideal for intimacy, storytelling, and creativity. The mind, rested but unburdened by daylight demands, wandered freely. This wasn't lost sleep. It was a different use of night. Soft humor returns gently. Joke 1. Your 3 a.m. Horror thoughts think they're philosophers. Joke 2. Nighttime clarity has never respected daylight logic. Joke 3. The best ideas at night mysteriously evaporate by morning. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. When people reduce artificial light exposure in the evening, segmented sleep patterns sometimes reemerge naturally. The body, given longer darkness, redistributes rest. This suggests the capacity never left. It was just compressed. Historians still argue whether the push toward consolidated 8-hour sleep was driven more by industrial efficiency than by biology. Factories needed predictable workers. Railroads needed synchronized time. Sleep adapted, as it always does, to social demand. You notice how this reframes your own nights. Waking briefly doesn't have to mean failure. Rest isn't invalidated by awareness. Okay, sleep can be a rhythm, not a block. Tension eases when expectation loosens. Another quirky tidbit drifts by. Some people report their most meaningful reflections happening during nighttime wakefulness, when cognitive filters are down, but anxiety hasn't ramped up. The brain operates differently there, less defensive, more associative. Historians still argue whether modern insistence on uninterrupted sleep has increased anxiety around normal nocturnal awakenings. Once labeled abnormal, the experience becomes stressful. Stress then disrupts sleep further. The loop feeds itself. Soft humor again, because it helps. Joke 1. Your brain wakes up just to check if you're still alive. Joke 2. Nothing feels more dramatic than being awake while everyone else sleeps. Joke 3. You've never felt more awake than when you're not supposed to be. You breathe into the stillness, letting this knowledge soften you. If you wake later tonight, you don't have to fight it. You can rest without sleeping, float without forcing descent. The body often finds its way back under when pressure builds again. Another mainstream fact slides in. Relaxed wakefulness at night is physiologically different from stressed wakefulness. Heart rate stays low. Muscles remain loose. This state doesn't carry the same costs as anxious insomnia. How you wake matters as much as that you wake. Historians still argue whether modern sleep advice should acknowledge these older patterns more openly. Some clinicians already do, reframing middle-of-the-night awakenings as neutral rather than catastrophic. Language alone can change the night. You feel the night holding you differently now, not as a test, but as a container. Sleep comes and goes in waves. Awareness rises, then falls. Nothing is broken. Nothing is late. Whatever strange evolution human sleep is going through, it's not a straight line forward. It loops back, borrowing from the past while negotiating the present. Ancient patterns surface when pressure eases and darkness returns. And as you lie here, suspended between knowing and drifting, the idea settles in quietly. You are not failing at modern sleep. You are remembering an older one. The room stays still. Your breath stays slow. Awareness thins again, not because you forced it, but because it no longer needs to stay alert. Sleep, segmented or smooth, wraps back around you, patient, familiar, and unconcerned with the clock. The night feels thinner now, almost transparent, as if you can see the question hanging beneath it. Can we relearn rest, or has the modern world changed sleep too deeply to reverse? You don't ask this out loud. It arrives quietly, the way honest questions usually do when your body is still and your defenses are low. One mainstream fact settles in with cautious optimism. Sleep is remarkably plastic. Timing, duration, and quality can all improve when conditions change, even after years of disruption. Circadian rhythms respond to light. Sleep pressure responds to consistency. Habits reshape physiology. The system bends back when given a chance. Historians still argue whether modern humans are uniquely bad at sleeping or simply living through a period of rapid transition. Other eras faced upheaval too: industrialization, urbanization, electrification. Sleep suffered, then adapted. What feels permanent now may be provisional. You sense this in small experiments you've already tried. Earlier mornings that felt painful at first, then oddly stabilizing. Evenings dim just a little, enough to make you yawn sooner. Routines that didn't fix everything, but softened the edges. Sleep doesn't require perfection, it responds to nudges. There's a quirky tidbit sleep clinicians like to share. One of the most powerful sleep interventions is boring consistency. Same wake time, every day, even after bad nights. It sounds punishing. It works anyway. The brain craves predictability more than comfort in the long run. Soft humor drifts in because even optimism needs it. Joke 1. Your circadian rhythm loves routine the way cats love boxes. Joke 2. The most effective sleep advice is also the least exciting. Joke 3. Nothing feels less relaxing than committing to relaxation. Another mainstream fact slides in. Morning light exposure is often more effective than any nighttime strategy. Light anchors the clock. When mornings are bright and consistent, nights fall into place more easily. Sleep is set by how you start the day, not how hard you try to end it. Historians still argue whether ancient humans intuitively understood this or simply lived with unavoidable dawns. Either way, their clocks were disciplined by nature. Yours lives indoors, negotiating with alarms and weather apps. You notice how relearning rest isn't about going backward. You can't uninvent electricity or cities. You can't live by firelight unless you're very committed to the aesthetic. Relearning rest means translation, finding modern equivalents for ancient cues. Darkness doesn't have to be absolute, just meaningful. Quiet doesn't have to be perfect, just safe. Routine doesn't have to be rigid, just reliable. Sleep listens for patterns, not purity. A fringe tidbit floats in from behavioral science. People who approach sleep with curiosity rather than judgment report better long-term outcomes. Less, why am I broken? More, what does my body respond to? Shame activates arousal, interest calms it. Your nervous system prefers gentleness. Soft humor returns lightly. Joke 1. Your body responds better to kindness than to threats. Joke 2. Yelling at yourself to sleep has never worked. Joke 3. Sleep coaches don't need motivational speeches, just dimmers and patience. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Reducing sleep effort, doing less in bed, not more, often improves sleep. Getting out of bed when awake, reserving the bed for rest, breaking the association between lying down and struggling. Paradoxical, but effective. Sleep comes easier when it's not cornered. Historians still argue whether earlier societies worried less about sleep because they had fewer expectations of it. When sleep isn't tied to performance metrics, it carries less pressure. Expectation shapes experience. The night feels different when it isn't graded. You feel that pressure loosening now. The idea that sleep must be perfect to be worthwhile fades. Rest can be partial and still restorative. Some nights repair the body, others repair perspective. Both count. Another quirky tidbit drifts by. People who forgive a bad night's sleep better the next one. Resilience matters more than any single evening. The system is cumulative. One night rarely defines anything. Historians still argue whether modern humans can truly reclaim natural sleep in artificial environments. Maybe not fully, but natural was never a fixed target. It was always adaptive. Your sleep doesn't need to look like anyone else's, past or present. You breathe, feeling the night respond. Your body isn't asking for a revolution, it's asking for cooperation. Clearer signals, less interference, a little trust. Whatever strange changes are happening to human sleep, the capacity to rest hasn't vanished. It's been obscured, crowded, sometimes misunderstood, but it's still there, waiting for conditions that feel safe enough. And as you lie here, no longer chasing solutions, you feel something shift. Not dramatic, just easier. The question doesn't need an answer tonight. Can we relearn rest? Maybe the better question is whether we can stop unlearning it. The room stays quiet, the night stays open, and sleep, not as a goal but as a response, drifts closer again, drawn not by effort but by the gentle sense that nothing more is required right now. The night thins toward its edge, and with it comes a quiet sense of direction. Where nights are heading is no longer abstract. You feel it in your body, in the way sleep resists some futures and leans gently toward others. Nothing is decided yet. Sleep, like humanity, adapts slowly, one habit at a time. One mainstream fact settles in with measured calm. Global sleep duration continues to decline in many regions, but awareness of sleep health is rising just as steadily. More research, more public conversation, more recognition that sleep underpins mental health, productivity, and longevity. The problem is visible now. Visibility changes trajectories. Historians still argue whether societies only value sleep once it's scarce. History suggests that rest is often ignored until its absence becomes impossible to overlook. Factories learned this. Militaries learned it. Healthcare systems are learning it now. Sleep eventually demands attention. You imagine futures branching quietly from this moment. One path continues brightness, busyness, and endless availability. Sleep compresses further, becoming a niche skill practiced by the disciplined or the lucky. Another path softens. Work bends, lighting dims, mornings regain importance. Neither future arrives all at once. They seep in through policy, culture, and individual choice. There's a quirky tidbit futurists sometimes mention. Some tech companies are experimenting with circadian-friendly lighting that shifts color and intensity throughout the day. Offices that glow blue in the morning and warm toward evening. Buildings that behave more like skies. It's not perfect, but it's an acknowledgement that biology exists. Soft humor drifts in because imagining the future deserves it. Joke 1. Your circadian rhythm is not impressed by innovation buzzwords. Joke 2. Disrupting sleep was never the goal. Joke 3. The sun remains undefeated. Another mainstream fact slides in. School districts that delay start times see sustained improvements in student sleep, mood, and performance. Work-from-home flexibility has similar effects for many adults. Structural change matters more than individual hacks. Thus, sleep improves fastest when systems cooperate. Historians still argue whether these changes represent temporary experiments or permanent shifts. Culture moves unevenly. What benefits one group unsettles another. Sleep sits at the center of that tension, sensitive to how time itself is organized. You feel how your own nights have been shaped by systems you didn't design. Alarms, deadlines, lighting, expectations. And yet, within those systems, you found small spaces of agency. Dimmer evenings, gentler mornings, fewer arguments with the dark. The future of sleep isn't just written in policy, it's practiced nightly. A fringe tidbit floats in from speculative science. Some researchers explore pharmacological ways to enhance specific sleep functions, memory consolidation, yet emotional processing, without increasing total sleep time. While the ethics are debated fiercely, efficiency again competes with sufficiency. Sleep has always resisted being optimized without consequence. Soft humor returns lightly. Joke 1. Sleep does not want to be upgraded. Joke 2. Version 1.0 worked fine for thousands of years. Joke 3. Bugs appear when you rush the patch. Another mainstream fact settles beside you. Mental health outcomes improve when sleep improves, often before other interventions take hold. Anxiety softens. Depression lifts slightly. Resilience increases. Sleep is leverage. Small gains produce outsized effects. Historians still argue whether future societies will treat sleep as infrastructure, protected, designed for, subsidized, or continue to treat it as a private struggle. The science is clear. The politics are slower. You imagine cities that dim deliberately, schools that respect adolescent clocks, jobs that value output without demanding constant availability. None of this is utopian. It's practical. Sleep-friendly systems already exist in pieces. The question is scale. Another quirky tidbit drifts by. Cultures that ritualize sleep through shared evening practices, predictable closures, communal quiet, report lower sleep anxiety. When rest is expected, it's easier to enter. Ritual carries permission. Historians still argue whether modern individualism made sleep lonelier. Each person alone with their mattress, their tracker, their worries. Perhaps the future of sleep includes more shared norms, less private pressure. You feel the night easing toward completion. The question of where sleep is heading doesn't need a single answer. It's heading wherever humans decide to make room for it. Biology will meet us there. It always has. Whatever strange thing has been happening to human sleep, it isn't a collapse. It's a negotiation between light and dark, speed and slowness, control and surrender. And as you lie here, aware but unbothered, you realize something simple. Sleep doesn't need saving, it needs space. Space in evenings, space in mornings, space in expectations. The future of sleep will look less like perfection and more like permission. And with that thought, gentle and unforced, the night loosens its last questions. Awareness softens. The edge of tomorrow fades. Sleep, patient as ever, carries you the rest of the way. The pace slows now. Words lengthen. Nothing is urgent anymore. You don't need to remember what was said. Your body already took what it needed. Breath by breath, the night smooths itself out. Only like water settling after a stone sinks below the surface. There is nowhere you need to be. Nothing you need to fix. The world will continue without supervision for a few hours longer. Feel the weight beneath you. Steady, reliable. Feel the temperature of the room, just right or close enough. Notice the gentle rhythm of your breathing, how it happens without instruction. Thoughts may still drift through. Let them. They don't require response. They're just passing weather, thinning as they move on. Sleep doesn't ask for belief. It asks for permission. So give it that. Not with effort, but with ease. Loosen the jaw, soften the brow. Let the muscles around your eyes melt downward. The night is doing what it has always done, holding you while the body repairs, the mind reorganizes, and tomorrow quietly prepares itself. You are safe here, while you are allowed to rest. And as awareness fades, as language dissolves into sensation, there's only one thing left to do. Nothing at all.